Welcome to the social newsroom right here at the Simmer Box Studios. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Cate Rira. Wherever you're watching us from, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, today's topic will have you gripping the edge of your seat. Why? Because we're discussing the Finance Bill 2025, and especially the creative economy. And to help me delve into this topic is great men in the industry who have been there before the finance bill. Now that it is here in 2025, we'll take a look at the differences between 2024 and 2025. Let me introduce them first, and then we can get into it. Sitting right next to me is Ezekiel Onyango, who is one of the founders of PIPEC and also is the chairman of KFTPA, the Kenya Film and Television Practitioners Association. Welcome to the show.
Asante.
How does it feel being here?
Amazing. Nice place you got, and can't wait to unpack this tax conversation.
Sure. We're going to get into that. A known actor, filmmaker, and of course, a creative industry enthusiast. He has sat and given his opinion on Finance Bill 2024. Now he's going to be giving us his opinion on 2025. Peter Kawa, chairman of Kenya's Actors Guild. Karibu.
Asante sana.
How are you doing?
Feels nice.
Yeah?
Yes, feels nice to be in an environment where creatives converge and have conversations that are heavy.
There's a little bit of a difference between being an actor and now talking about policy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that for yourself?
We have been bestowed upon us, a greater power where at some point many people assume that being an actor, you just have to get lines, that lines that have been prepared for you. But now, speaking matters policy, you have to go and do research and get to understand matters governance, regulation. So there's far much more than just performing for screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Good to know. Let's just get into the panel itself. You're seeing how already they understand what is critical about this discussion. So please leave your comments on our pages. But let's get into it. It's been 2 years of this new administration already, and we've seen a new change with every year and with every governance. This is the second finance bill. The first one took us to the streets. I hope you were there. But it's safe to say that it's a good indication that now Kenyans are more aware of the policies being passed, the laws being suggested and proposed. So it's a good direction. Let me just start there. But let's just do a quick preview. How are things across the sectors? Not necessarily the film industry, but across all other sectors.
Well, from where I see it, terrible. Simply because whatever we do still resonates around commerce. Okay. We supply and the market buys from what they demand. But the value we are getting, whether it's from music, it's from film, it's from fashion, it does not equate to what the actual value of what products we put into the market have.
Yes.
We have cases where you hear royalties are being paid at 500 shillings. You put out a film and you go to the cinema, it's becoming too expensive because the cinemas are residual in malls, so you don't get the numbers. The fashion designer tells you 25,000 to put up a dress for you, and you feel like it's expensive just because of hard economic times.
Yes.
So in general, from the enterprise side of it, it's not good. But from the development side of it, amazing, because we are seeing an upsurge and an increase in outputs.
Okay.
We have more TV shows than ever before. Yeah. We've got more recording artists than ever before. We've got more fashion artists than ever before.
Very interesting. Ezzy has still stuck into the creative industry.
Yes.
So let's get out of the studio and the cameras. What do you feel about the Finance Bill 2024 and 2025 in other industries, other than just what you're used to?
The fact that this session is being recorded.
Yes.
I have to be very honest with you that I've not yet read the finance bill.
Okay.
2024 to 2025. Yes.
But how do you feel as a consumer and every day?
Okay.
How do you feel so far? Yes.
I think what happened during the finance bill of 2023, 2024, I think the Gen Zs kind of jostled the government a bit. I have a feeling this year they are going to be a bit careful how they handle each aspect of the finance bill to ensure that they do not rattle any feathers per se. So they are going to be very careful how they implement any taxes.
You've said that being careful
and
rattle
proposals.
Some feathers, and I've just remembered.
Yes.
2 presidents have apologized to the youth today.
I was there at the prayer and breakfast.
And the president in Uganda has apologized. And the Kenyan president is a politics as well. Very interesting. But anyway, let's stick to the film industry especially. One of the good things that we've gotten out of the 2 years of this governance is the passing and the lifting of the permit fees to film on Sunday in Nairobi. What do you think about that?
Okay, so first I'll give you my take on the finance bill.
Okay.
I look at the finance bill as a marriage proposal. Where a family, not even a man, you know the way you go for a ratio and with your person you speak behind and say, or they tell you, my family will expect this. When you guys come organized like this. So you're given a little more Kenya.
Yes.
And that's how the function becomes successful, and then everybody's happy in the end. You get your bride and you leave.
Yeah.
In my view, what happened last year, if I stick to the creative sector, there was no more Kenya. So there was no direct linkage with the various sectors to really understand what are the needs that the government need to cushion.
Okay.
I feel and very convicted to say that they had a very top-down approach where policymakers probably sat somewhere in Naivasha and decided that because we've got these ambitions, we've got this agenda to achieve, we've got this economic recovery to do, we will try as much as possible to raise as much money from taxes, and we will do it this way.
Yeah.
Then they came with the proposal and took it top down.
And all this based on assumptions.
Yes.
Yes.
The approach I see this year stays really close to what the government's agenda is, which is bottom up, because there were engagements.
Okay.
I participated in some, and I've seen in other sectors like climate and agriculture that there was real participation of these are our needs.
Okay.
And this is, don't tell us you're subsidizing fertilizer, but the fertilizer comes as a blanket fertilizer. It's not the same that will work in Isiolo, it's not the same that will work in the coast. So I think from the participation, you can see a great improvement in this year's proposal. And I will commend them and say, if I'm to compare the two,
Yes.
this one feels like it's more bottom-up. It's more inclusive in terms of the proposal.
Yeah.
It's still a bill. It will still need to go through other paces. But to come back to the creative industry, last year we had, I think, close to 14 issues that were affecting our sector.
Yes.
And we even did memorandums and, opinions to the legislature.
Yeah.
But this time, I'd say overall, it's only one issue because it's related to the internet. So you can see if we've moved from 14 painful things to possibly just one that we can still discuss and resolve, it's an improvement that we need to say that, okay, over here the government has put an effort.
Yeah.
The other thing is also, it's a challenge to us as citizens and as practitioners to participate more when these conversations are happening. And then we cross our fingers and hope that our submissions will be taken into consideration and then eventually made law.
Peter, you are the chairman of the Kenyan Actors Guild. Now, the industry has been going through so many natural disasters,
Yes.
from COVID-19 to, so many other issues coming in and out. And we can see that a lot has happened. It's been going back and forth, and we're trying to absorb these shocks and just recover as much as possible. But we're still seeing a pushback from the government. Just last month, the KFCB, Kenya Film Commission Board, sent a demand letter to creators. I know you're aware of that.
Yes.
And it was threatening them with legal action because they seem to be, implementing a law from 1962. Where do we go from here? Because already we had some movement. We were moving in the right direction, but then we're seeing a step back again.
I think there is forward movement in terms of just activity, but at the end of the day, for us to really engage with government appropriately, it has to come with structures and self-governance, not self-governance per se, but self-regulation.
Okay.
Government does not negotiate or have conversations with individuals. And that is what has been happening within the space. So what is government simply just trying to say is, please come to us with memorandum from associations and guilds and registered entities so that you can easily tabulate what it is that your concerns are. And so I think what we are trying right now, even as actors mostly, we are trying to self-regulate, have conversations amongst ourselves so that we can have one voice. And that is where the Kenyan Actors Guild comes in.
But what isn't it a little bit backward to say that we have to go to these associations, and yet they are fully aware of what is happening on the ground? The government cannot behave that they live in a different planet, and yet we are here with them. They can see that giving they want to take a legal action on a creator, normal creator, who is doing a YouTube channel. If you are imposing legal action on a big creator, what about the small creator still using their phone, just doing a small YouTube channel of what they're doing with their chickens back at home? What is that effect on the small creator if you're going to be imposing, big legal action on the larger creators who you actually defend?
I think it's very interesting, and in my view, all these things permit me to say that they all revolve around knowledge and education, reverse knowledge actually.
Okay.
Because a lot of the decision makers, so to speak, who sit and determine what the policies will be, what the regulations will eventually be, need a lot of sensitization on what the current state of things, given the intervention of technology, are. The fact that the regulator sends you a letter, not a notification of sorts, that there's no platform you enroll in, already tells you that there is a very big digital divide. The fact that it's a letter.
It's a letter, physical letter.
That comes to you.
Yeah.
And so I look at it and say, first of all, Kenya, with the advancements we have in technology, we should just go for self-regulation.
Okay.
The same way your show will be on YouTube. You're self-regulating because you know the parameters of the platform.
Yeah.
I cannot do this if I do this. So if the regulator can quickly develop a framework where if I make content, for it not to have issues, it needs to be in these parameters, and we co-create that framework.
Yes.
That problem will resolve completely. And we'll also become gatekeepers. If I see Peter putting up content that's inappropriate, I'll be the gatekeeper to tell him, you watch. So I think it's just a case of old laws trying to tackle new problems, and the new problems are overpowering the old laws.
And they are moving too fast even for the government itself.
But as much as we're saying they're moving too fast, the government has to keep up with what the world is doing. And that's why you see they're very quick to put out a digital platform tax, which I think was actually imposed last year. They wanted to impose the VAT on digital platform payments because I think they noticed there's a lot of uptake in online shopping and things like that.
Yes.
And a lot of people in the creative industry have moved their industry also online.
Yes.
And if they are trying to keep up with the world and also impose the law, isn't that retrogressive? Instead of giving tax breaks and, a little bit of leeway for a new economy, because the creative economy right now has turned very new.
Yes.
It's a very new economy.
Yes.
So what would be better, to tax and as you're learning, or give a tax break?
I think, first of all, they shouldn't be taxing the industry as you claim, because at the end of the day, they have not even invested anything within the industry itself to come and say, we want to milk this cow, yet they've not really provided any grass for it. So I think there's a big disconnect, and I think for them, they're trying to really do what is happening. It's moving too fast, like we said.
Yes.
So right now, it's a matter of, like he's saying, let's engage. Let's engage with the stakeholders. Let them understand what we're all about. Yeah. And then if they want, no one is opposed to any taxation. Even creatives are not opposed. Only that we're asking is, can there be at least consultation, so that at least there is no double taxation and any misconceived ideas from either parties.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
As we have a look at that, we can't be, blind to the fact that the economy is struggling all over the world. How can we build resilience, especially for the creative industry that is still, in its murky era? What can we do to build resilience at this time?
It's a very timely conversation, because when you talk about this time, we have a new development. We are seeing a very alarming trend where the world is moving from unipolarity to multipolarity. Okay. We are seeing countries becoming very protectionist about what they have. And like in the US, what has happened with the tariffs on Hollywood and tariffs on countries are really becoming they're taking a protectionist stage. And what we have in Kenya and the rest of Africa is it's very, very deep cultural asset of what we produce, because the world has not consumed not even 2% of it.
Yes.
So we also have to now think, whatever solutions you're bringing, you have to think in the framework of the position of the world, the new world order that's shaping. Two is, once you consider that, then you look at these two terms of growth and development. A lot of the time, especially in our sectors, we overlap these two terms.
Yeah.
And the government will always talk about how do we develop the creative economy. But it's practically impossible to develop something that hasn't grown. You know, even a child, you know, you were born and you grow, and then now the parents start taking you to school and your development starts.
But recently, KRA officer said children should start paying taxes. This is a by the way.
With growth and development, I think you're very right on tax breaks. You know, I always imagine a situation in Kenya where I'll hear one day and say, we've seen the potential of the creative industries, and the government has gazetted a place where it's a special economic zone, earmarked only for the creative industries, where even Sema Books, Baraza Media can go and take up space, and they enjoy the same incentives that are issued by Ken Invest, where you've got a 10-year tax break. You don't pay capital intensive tax. You don't pay VAT. You have a leeway in how you do your importation and customs. And those are the instruments that then help your business to grow. And after 10 years, your business has now gotten to a turnover volume of a certain amount. Then now you graduate to a business that can be taxed.
Sustainable.
So that's the model.
Yes.
That's the model I would, if I was to sit anywhere and make a decision, I would focus on growth and not on development. Because beyond the finance bill, the ministries also have something called a budget book.
Okay.
In the history of the budget books between the Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of the Creative Economy, if you interrogate the budget books, they don't look at growth. They look at development, and the development they look at is very objective. What is happening in the industry? We are seeing poets, and you see a line item saying we will train 160 poets. What's happening? So it's very objective, but there is no direct things on how do we grow this as an industry and as a sector. Last would be to figure out how all these things that come out on the creative industries actually get to the customer. And that is why we are seeing these weird proposals on tax, because the internet is a very interesting place. And there's a lot of money in the internet. I mean, more than half of our money is on M-Pesa. It's not even in the bank. You have platforms that have become middlemen, for lack of a better word. If I want to watch Peter's content today and it's on Netflix, I have to leave Kenya, go to Netherlands. I have to pay in Netherlands to watch. But I see him every day. If I want to watch any other piece of content, I'll go to Showmax. My take is that the biggest area that the government should look at is the platforms that connect creators and markets. They're not Kenyan platforms.
Yes.
They're not local platforms, almost all of them. And so they are looked at as foreign platforms. So Netflix will be asked to pay tax in Kenya. But because they're not resident in Kenya, they're not a Kenyan company, they have no obligation legally
To pay the tax.
to pay the VAT. So the taxman, what will they do? They will transfer that tax to the Kenyan consumer. And that's why I really love what Nigeria did, because Nigeria had the same problem, because the tax burden was being transferred to the consumer.
To the citizens.
But they passed a law that you must have a local registered office in Kenya, in Nigeria, sorry. And that is what made the imbalance shift, because then as a local company, you have tax obligations. And the taxes that they're trying to retrieve from customers, then they're retrieved from income tax and all the other taxes that the businesses will pay. So none of these platforms actually have local operations in Kenya.
And I think when you say that, it kind of brings back what you had said a little bit earlier, unipolarity.
Yes.
Let's try and look at that, Peter. Having and applying unipolarity in Africa and Kenya especially, what are some of the things you think we should do as a state? What are some of the things we should do to protect ourselves? Because all over the world, all states really protect themselves. Like, as he said, Nigeria has imposed, like every company has to institute their own company there. Others, like I think Sudan, are very strict on having a certain number of employees of every foreign company there. What are some of the unipolarity things that we could suggest that would safeguard, especially the creative economy?
I'd say culture. Culture, it's a mindset for us. We have to shift our mindset.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, it's the way we've been cultured in the sense that we appreciate things that are not really ours, international stuff, not ours. You can see most of our brands that are trying to come up and solve local problems. And yet you can tell if you put them, side by side, the international platforms, they are more or less the same, but people would rather put a lot of effort in equipping or investing in international brands, which unfortunately now makes us not really invest and grow our local brands, which now brings us to the problem that we are experiencing right now.
Very right.
Yeah.
There's something that we have to take note of the Finance Bill 2025. I'll go down to Section 31. So it is proposing to amend Section 8 of the VAT Act. And in that, they're trying to impose and amend the digital streaming services clause to add an additional tax on digital streaming services. So we're talking about Spotify, YouTube, Netflix, all the works.
Yeah.
And as they're doing that, they are terming them as broadcasting services. And in the same, they have put live streaming as a broadcasting service.
Yes.
And live streaming across Kenya could be done either on YouTube, like we are doing today,
IG Live,
Instagram, TikTok, etc.
Yes.
So we're looking at imposing a tax. I don't know how much was it. I don't want to say I don't know how much, but they intend to place that as a broadcast. How can you put Netflix streaming as a broadcast similar to a TikTok live?
Yes.
That definition of what a broadcast is one of the biggest questions right now for on the Finance Bill 2025. What do you think?
Broadcast is broadcast.
Okay.
In my view, I'll say because if you look at the definition of broadcast, is that you're exhibiting audiovisual content, regardless of how and what platform you're using,
or regardless of whom.
That's why there's radio broadcast, there's TV broadcast, there's OTT broadcast, So broadcast is broadcast. I think the thing about TikTok and the other
Instagram.
and Instagram and YouTube is a question of understanding who has been classified, not the platform, but who, because you only broadcast rights.
Yeah.
Whatever I show, whether it's a movie, it's a song, I'm the one with the copyright. So it's the copyright that's broadcasted. I think the conversation should move away from the platforms and go to the actual copyright that's being broadcasted. And that's where the classification should happen. So that if I am maybe tier A content creator, I make a business turnover of X amount. I work with brands that pay me. I don't just do social videos for this. Then I'm classified under this. And I agree that this is what I do for a living. Then there is me, who just like making fun videos and whatnot. I'm classified under Class C, where it's non-profit, it's just fun. So that when we move away from the platforms, because I can do that in YouTube, I can do that in Instagram, I can do that in TikTok. I think the focus, whoever is looking at that bill, focused on the wrong element, which is the platform. Because the platform, even Citizen TV or any other broadcaster will use there.
Yes.
Right? So the platform is just a conduit. You focus on the form of copyright that's being put on the platform. Is it money making? Is it for profit? Is it what? Classify at that level. And then we all know that if I am classified as C, then I know my content doesn't qualify for. That's the approach I would take.
If you cross the commercial side, then you are regarded as...
And that goes back to my earlier point of self-regulation. Because imagine a world we are in today, platforms are only going to increase. They're not going to decrease.
I feel like that's very discouraging to start tiering the OTT broadcasters and placing all broadcasters as such. And agree with me or not.
Yes,
I would
yes.
hope you would, but I am here as a moderator. Your opinions are welcome. Remember, keep put them on our YouTube.
Yes, yes.
So let's take reference of other states.
Yes.
We have some of the biggest streamers in the US who are now millionaires, even now starting schools and teaching people how to stream.
Yes.
People who are streaming 24 hours on YouTube, these are a
Exactly.
lot of money.
Yes.
When are they taxed? What are they taxed on? Are they still taxed on streaming? You know, it's always good sometimes to take a point of reference
Yes.
with states that have already done this before.
Yes.
You know, I feel like Kenya, we've always had a habit of being so quick to tax something new. Okay, people are in crypto, let's tax them. We haven't studied in other states what's happening.
I'll give you an example. Like the diary of a CEO. It's a business in the United Kingdom.
Yes. It was a podcast first.
It's a business.
Okay.
The product the business is putting out
Yes.
is a podcast,
Yes.
is a book, is merchandise, is what, but it is a business and classified under entertainment business.
Yes.
The United Kingdom has really crazy taxes and they pay. And the good thing with the UK, if you go to gov.uk and you type in the business, you actually see, are you compliant, the amount of tax they pay, what tax band you're in, and what threshold is it that if you get to this turnover, then you are bumped up.
Yes.
So my view is that we live in a capitalist country and we have to accept it. Because Kenya is a country that behaves like it's socialist, but it's actually a capitalist country.
Yes.
And this is the fundamental truth that we must always remember. We are not a socialist state. The government puts up a front of being a socialist state because a socialist state is where you provide everything for your citizens and you cushion them with price control. You ensure that it's citizens first, enterprise second. But in reality, tusipodanganyana, Kenya is a capitalist country.
I hear what
And
you
because
say.
it's a capitalist country,
Yes.
at the end of the day, once you classify yourself as a business, whether you're a sole proprietor, you're a partnership, once you've put yourself in that box of, I am a business, and it happens in this way. You start up as an influencer by yourself. Your name is person X. But then a client comes to you and says, hey, we really dig your stuff. We really want to work with you. Then, oh, yeah. Then you're taken to procurement. Procurement tell you, send us your company details. You say, oh, no, I'm not a company. I'm so-and-so at IG. And I say,
That's how you lose the opportunity.
now, if you don't have a company, go and find your friend with a company because we cannot pay you or bill you or process you if you're not a company.
Yes.
And at that point, creators are finding themselves in a very difficult decision. And they do it because of the opportunity.
Okay, of course.
And at that point, you don't realize you've actually converted yourself from a content creator
To now.
to an enterprise
Yes.
in a capitalist environment.
Yes.
Where there's any opportunity for commerce,
Utachukuliwa.
government inakujia. Pesa ya kuliwa.
So, Peter, you're going to tell me you agree with putting creators on tiers? Like they are entertainment tiers, others who are creating content, others are just for,
It is the only way, because at the end of the day, what they are proposing is a blanket, tax,
Yes.
where it does not, segregate who's who. So I think his proposal works, because otherwise, if you don't work with that proposal, then you go with the first option, which is the
Let me
blanket
give
tax.
you another example.
Yes.
There's something called a film license that I don't agree with as a filmmaker, because when I interrogate the value it gives us, there's no value.
Okay.
It's just an instrument of revenue for the regulator.
Yes.
But now we're negotiating and they say, okay, how about we also create tires in the film industry for the license? If my project is worth 100 million, then it's okay, let me pay the license for 10,000. Then have a student license that is gratis, that is zero. But ensure the person still takes the license. Why is this important? And why is the tiring important? It's because then we are clustered in easy boxes of data collection. When we operate in a way that today nobody can go to a dashboard and actually say 3 million Kenyans are doing content. This is the nature of content. How can we help them? We lack indicators. We lack data collection points. And that, as it stands now, These are the closest things we have that we can hang on to say, let students not pay film licenses. Let guys who are beginning their practice not pay film licenses, but let them just do it for compliance, because then we're able to collect data and we're able to see how we can inform policy. Even on this other side of classification,
Yes.
if I classify myself as a content creator, I can be counted. The day I want to move from here to here, I've also come to understand that for me to move here, this is what it will mean. So you're also giving a mirror to somebody who wants to convert from just being a content creator to enterprise.
Yes.
They're like, I'll need to pay tax. I'll need this. Maybe it will be better if we get into a partnership.
Okay.
Then we can spread the risks. With this level of mirrors, then we are able to grow in a very structured way. And then we'll get to a place where then the tires are no longer
an issue as such.
Remember when in the beginning I said we are in growth phase, not development phase.
Yes.
So just because of growth, I would really advocate for that.
And I think from experience, even from the industry itself, when it talks about data, why our industry lacks data is because people actually find ways to shortcut their way into making films. It's because they are running away from paying the fees when they know very well that they do not have an outlet. They are not sure whether the film is going to sell or not. So you see now you're denying the regulator data of how many films are even within the economy or in the system.
Then it comes to June, the National Bureau of Statistics says negligible.
Yes.
You say we are not being given a film fund. The government say, but why should we give you? There's no data. We don't know what you do.
What is clear, what is clearly clear is that there's a serious lack of engagement between industry players and to participate now with policymakers.
One thing I'd like to add on the VAT Act that you mentioned before I forget.
Yeah.
There is a very beautiful thing in the VAT Act, and it has been there for the last 4 years.
What is it?
It's VAT exemption for film and TV production. This is an instrument we fought for during the Uhru's government, and it was instrumental.
Yes.
It's a provision. You go and you read it. It says anybody doing film and TV production qualifies, whatever.
The question is that exemption still active till to date?
It is in the Act.
Government's done.
No, it is even in this one. The Act, that has not been amended.
Okay.
So I'll encourage people to say, even if this tax proposal goes ahead, the one about the 5% addition on whatnot,
yes,
we really need to figure out as industry, then how do we come back and exhaust? Because nobody has enjoyed that benefit. You know why?
Okay.
Because even when we did the sensitization, we did a virtual, we did one with from KFTPA and KRA, and we call our members and we say, there are goodie bags here. Producing a VAT exemption means that you actually have no burden to the taxman, all these beautiful things. What we should do now is see the things that are there that can help us operate at cost.
Yes.
How do we maximize and take advantage of that? So that's one thing I say, whether you're doing content, whether you're doing film, whether you're doing TV, it's a benefit that is there for all of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's clear that there are laws that, are seeming to be active. I was really questioning that very exemption. I wasn't sure if it was still there, but I'm realizing that there's so many erratic laws that have been, put out some governments to kind of lure the creative industry, because the creative industry carries most of Kenyans. We influence how people vote.
Yes.
I can see, I remember as well, this last parliament, they passed the sports bill and copyright amendment bill. There's also been a great investment in now infrastructure for internet. And I'm concerned if we are the ones who are supposed to sit at the helm of policy making or rather guide or give our opinions, which is some of the areas that we should invest more at this moment. I feel like this should be included in the finance bill. This should be included in some of these bills. Which of these parts do you think we should invest more?
When you say invest, the government or private sector?
Not the government.
Okay.
Because, one of the big problems we have with the finance bill and a lot of policy is that they are erratic. And maybe there are not so many ways to educate some of the filmmakers that they haven't exempted. Like so there's so many erratic and lucrative bills here and there. Oh, we're removing taxes on nails, and that's a lowering to women in the country.
Yes.
But we're like, does that make sense? Which are some of these things to highlight with the government that even though you're making erratic laws, try and focus on this one. Itatusaidia before kuliko nyingine.
Mine will not necessarily answer your question,
Yes.
but one of the things we felt, even as the Kenyan Actors Guild, how we can be part of the conversation is, first of all, data collection. When he keeps on insisting that we do not have any data to help the government understand who we really are, what we are doing, and how to even invest in what we do. So we've been doing a lot of data collection from our membership, and we are trying our best to identify how many actors are in Mombasa, Kisumu, how many are disabled, how many have any formal education. Once we get that data, then we will know the need basis of every county. That is, now we can have an easy conversation with government agencies or state agencies on how they can fund the growth of our industry. So for us as Kenyan Actors Guild, we felt like that is the way to begin. There's so many ways of trying to solve the issues that the country is going through, the creative economy is going through. But for us, we felt once you sort the actor, then automatically bottom up.
It's true. It starts there.
There's a risk in collecting data, as you're saying.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, lacunas and problems with some of the data policies that are existing, right?
Yes.
Proposed finance.
Yes.
Some of them giving leeways to, banking firms and a lot of this telcos. They're being given leeways in accessing that data. And that fear will be implicated on your very actors whenever you ask them, oh, give us your data. But tumesikia hii data inaenda kufanyiwa hivi na hivi. So how do you still give your actor and any other creator peace of mind with this data? This is what we'll do, because there's also that problem. Remember, as much as they're an actor, they are a citizen at the end of the day.
Yes.
That consume and are taxed in many other things, whether they buy bread or they're on stage.
Okay, I like that thing because it's a very interesting thing I've been seeing around the data thing. But before I contribute to that, what Peter was saying earlier about where the government should focus.
Yes.
I think talent in public sector
How?
is one thing. Yeah. If I was to say the first place that they should begin is always look inside.
Yes.
And a big question to ask is, a public service, do we have the right talent in public service to play the bridge and understand the needs and then translate it into policy and then help growth and development?
Yes.
I think for me, that's the biggest gap that we have. And in the absence of the right talent in public service, and I say this with a lot of humility and respect, it then becomes very difficult to actually actualize anything.
Yeah.
So for me, I think the government should invest in talent.
To be the bridge.
To be the bridge, like get the right people in public service for the shape disciplines to deliver. The same way you can see, you look at the technology side. If you look at the people who are like the talent pool in the technology side is well improved. You can feel like there was a very big migration of people from private sector who went into the ICT authority and all these other places and CK. And you can feel that there is...
That was in the previous government, not this.
The government is government.
Okay.
Because, and I say that because I always separate leadership and government. The director who was there when Uhuru was president is still the director today. So, and government is from management level going down. To me, that's how I look at it.
The civil service.
Because the guys who will tell you, I've seen 6 presidents, who are you? The guys who tell ministers.
Not necessarily the cabinet.
Yeah.
Not the executive.
Yes, because the cabinet is a policy instrument. Their job is to say, this is what we are going to focus on. But government is from directors to officers.
Yes.
And so those guys are always there. The leadership of, let's say, the Film Commission, KFCB, Department of Film Services, it has not changed. Pre-Uhuru, to Uhuru's time,
Okay.
to now Ruto's time, it's the same people.
I think for normal Kenyans, whenever we see a shift in executive,
Yeah, you are still the government has changed.
so I'm like, you're saying we want proper talent, and I'm like, I think that's a political move.
No,
because you see,
I'm talking about not leadership, and I needed to make that distinction.
of course.
And so I feel if that is focused on,
Yeah.
we might feel a shift. On this other, excuse me, remind me the other thing that we're talking about before I responded to.
Oh, we're talking about what are the key areas that the government should focus on?
No, then there was another conversation after that, because then I contributed to Peter's by saying this.
The data issue.
Yes, the data issue.
Yeah.
So, who owns Africa's data? Nobody in the continent. But African data is already owned elsewhere.
Multinationals.
Who owns Africa's creative data? Nobody in the continent. But somebody already owns that whole data. Facebook today can tell you more about yourself than what Safaricom can tell you about yourself.
Yes.
And so I agree that data protection should be a very fundamental thing, but we should also not be very naive to say that my data will do this because we've already given it all out.
Unknowingly.
Unknowingly or knowingly or,
Unknowingly, we're not aware.
Yeah, so I think the bigger conversation would be how do we protect data of our people and the integrity of it?
Okay.
I say focus on ensuring we develop local technologies. And this is what I'm studying. How do we develop creative technologies and deploy them as policy instruments? If today a minister makes a ruling and says, or a pronouncement, and says, to every collective management organization in Kenya, you will need to deploy intelligence that looks like this, blockchain services that look like this, or else we are not giving you a license. You've sorted out that sphere for life.
Okay.
So if we focus on developing technology that's homegrown, at least we will answer one question. The person who owns the data is ourselves.
Let's begin with
And then now we can talk about how do we manage the integrity and the boundaries. So the proposals in the bill about the tax, yes, it will be like that. But that data that we're trying to protect, somebody else already has it.
I think we were a bit to the punch on that one. I want us to delve into the Finance Bill 2025. So I'm going to read some of the clauses, then we get into it. Let me begin with the new tax on software purchase. This is Section 2 of the Finance Bill.
Right.
This is paragraph 2A, which is proposing an amendment of now Section 2, Cap 470. So this is, it's a definition of royalty. It's very essential for the creative industry. Royalty by adding the words and includes the distribution of software where regularly payments are made for the use of the software through the distributor immediately after the words support fees.
Yes.
Those are the amendments. So this clause is seeking to add a new tax on the purchase and regular use of software. Remember, Kenyans have become so many new software developers. We have them every day. So this will lead to an increase in cost of subscription-based platforms. We're talking about Adobe Suite, Final Cut. And I know the editors will be very interested in this. This is used by all creatives as well. Further distributors of softwares, including those building music, videos, and digital tools, will face an additional tax obligation, which is reducing the margins of now, their finance and increasing the compliance burden. And we're like, wait, first of all, we understand that the Kenyan government this is very new to them. The business of software purchases and how, that's how we conduct business in the creative industry. Taxing softwares, the making of softwares and the use of softwares, because also software business has become, it has gotten a very big uptake. But like, what do we do to this proposed finance bill? How do we fix this finance bill?
It shouldn't be there in the first place.
So you want it, scrapped off altogether?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I believe that Peter is right. And again,
you have to have a backing. You just can't say you don't want it. Or there's a reason as to why it was suggested. It was proposed.
I think it's a proposal that's supposed to push development.
Yes.
Because whatever indicator has informed it, because I'm sure there is an indicator that informed that proposal, or pia mtu tu alijiambia mwenyewe. But it does not support growth.
Yes.
It can sustain development, but it will not support growth. It is a proposal that should be paused at the moment, not pursued further. because if we want to grow, it should actually be reversed to incentives on software development, incentives on software purchase, so that the cost of production goes down. And we can be able to have more people using software. So personally, that adjustment, and especially on royalty and the fact that it's at purchase, should be made an incentive, not a tax obligation.
I think that makes sense, because when we say we pause it, we can pause and study it. I think that's why we're more research on what is royalty, what is software, what are the monies we're getting before anything else.
And I think, again, over and over again, that's what we've been saying. You cannot really just start taxing without really consulting the industry players and the stakeholders and get to understand what their needs are first. Once you do that, then we can have a conversation about how can you tax after we start making margins, profit margins, where we can say now we are in business. But right now, all these industries are really trying to find their voice.
I'm glad you've said profit margins, because we're just going to dive into that business.
Yes.
So there is another proposal as well. The clause is on tax on business over the internet. We have, I think right now in Kenya, we have over 50 online shops, big online shops, not the smaller ones. It's just online shops, like we're talking Amazon and the likes. Have those kind in Kenya. I don't want to say particular names because that's advertising. So this section,
But that's beautiful.
thank you for them. They're doing a good job. People employed in Kenya. So that is Section 38 of the Finance Bill 2025. Remember, that's the focus. And it's proposing an amendment on now the Excise Duty Act. So the provision is seeking to introduce a specific tax on businesses that is conducted via the internet. We can say this is a totally unfair one, but it's important to note that this provision could discourage small-scale digital monetization. Right now, you want to buy even water, you can order online and it will be delivered to your doorstep. But the government also has a job to track, where the money is going and where it's coming from, because also the country needs to be, saved from the amount of debt we have. And I think we're the only ones who can get ourselves out of it. So to be a devil's advocate a little bit, the taxing business online is essential. Monitor the actions online.
Before you operate, before you do your business online, definitely you're using devices that you've bought. You're using bundles. All this you've already been taxed before you even get, right? So doesn't that sound like double taxation maybe?
How do I say this?
Because the device that you're going to use to engage the business in.
I think ideally, even the pain points you've brought about this bill, they all rotate around the internet. And so if you look at what we were having last year, from the 14 issues to this, I said one big issue around the internet. It's also, again, a question of understanding the digital environment. It's clearly that it's not well understood by the drafters. But on the business, I have two sides of it. Me, I'm a patriot. I love Kenya so much, right? And that's why I'm an advocate of create an environment where our local technologies develop and protect them, cushion them to grow. Create an environment where it's really expensive to operate on the foreign platforms, so that we are forced to
incentivize using local
to use our technology. Because if we are not careful, in just a few years, everything we do will be on the platforms, will be on the internet. But then all the money that we will be trading on these platforms will not be in our economy. And that is a bigger risk. I'll give you an example of, I was telling you earlier about Ireland. Ireland right now have a very unique problem of plenty of cash in their economy.
It's a very good problem to have.
And why is it? They had a very smart way of offering special economic zones and incentives. And a lot of these big tech companies, your Amazon, your Google, your Meta, took up those things there. And when we do Facebook ads, when we do anything on this platform that requires us to pay on the back end, all that money goes to the Irish Treasury, because you're paying to their country. So on this taxation over the internet. I would say to create an environment for your local affiliate productions streaming platform to grow.
Yes.
Tax Netflix heavily.
Yes.
So that I know that hii movie yapita iko Netflix na iko huku. But huku affiliate nitaipata na 50 bob, huku kwingine I have to pay 5,000 per month.
Yes.
You naturally gravitate towards that.
Yes.
Your local vendor store, go there. Your local fintech company that's locally developed, there. So be soft on the locally developed ones, but zile za kukuja, let them pay, but not the user, let the businesses pay. But you see, it becomes impossible for the business to pay if the business is not registered in Kenya. So it should be angled on a level of protectionist. We are doing this to protect and cushion the local developers who are developing technology so that it's not expensive for them to develop. So you know very well that the tax should be removed from the consumer who's using to the platform. So use platform-based taxation. Let YouTube pay the tax, let whatever other platform pay the tax, and if it's locally developed, let it not pay, and if it pays, let it pay something little.
I think you come from the school of thought of self-polarity. Call it self-polarity? Or what did you call it? You call it self-polarity.
No, unipolarity to multipolar. Yeah. That's where I am.
That's your school of thought because it's still surrounding us. I want to go to our neighbors here, Uganda. They passed an introduction. They passed the Ugandan parliament. That's why you're laughing. The reason is that Uganda's parliament passed the introduction of the 5% levy on gross digital services income received on non-resident providers from local consumers. Sort of what you were preaching. This was in effect from July 2023. And in addition, Uganda also added an 18% VAT on digital services. So we've seen it happen in other countries. Now, the monitoring is the issue. I think we need to get data on how
they're doing it,
how it's working now since then. But, you know, seeing our neighbors already doing it before, do you feel like it can inspire how we should?
Monkey see, monkey do.
Do you think that that's what we did?
I think so. And when you really go
Claiming that our president took a reference from, from Uganda.
But when you really go to the ground and ask the users of these facilities, internet there, are they really having an easy time as businessmen? No, of course not, even as content creators.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Please do.
What's your take on this business tax?
On the business tax myself, I feel as someone who actually does business online,
Right.
I feel like as many other laws, it's understudied. I don't feel like it. I usually feel like Africa, and especially Kenya, is a young state. And it's really unfair to tax and constantly poke holes on someone young who's creating a dream, which happens with these taxes. Constantly shaking and changing these laws and not creating a stability for a long time for them to grow enough to study. I believe that more research should be done. Make it easier for these online businesses to survive.
And then
And also maybe we could do the tiers.
Yes.
Because there's smaller people who are resellers, drop shippers, shipping. Most of them exist in Nairobi. As someone, do you have the stock of, some of this clothes, some of this kind of thing?
2 weeks, give me 2 weeks.
Yes. So taxing a drop shipper the same as someone who has a whole warehouse of products is quite unfair. So having a look at maybe putting them in tiers and also just give us more 3 years to study this industry before we start taxing them. It will be safer for everyone.
Okay.
I think that would help.
I agree with you.
Like a pilot phase.
What you're saying also, there's an article I was reading recently about these BNPL platforms, the buy now, pay later.
Yes.
And the way they're just closing in Kenya. At some points they had spiked. And they were citing the same thing you've said, where some of them became stockists without knowing. So you're a BNPL provider, but you've gone to LG and you've taken 100 fridges to put in your store. Ideally, that was not your primary business. You're not supposed to stock. You're just supposed to be a payment solution.
Yes.
And then taxes also came because now you're being taxed
as a retailer.
And then you're being taxed as somebody who's also operating business on the digital, then you're being taxed on sale, point of sale and income to your business.
Yes.
And that volume of taxes also just affected their business model a lot. So you're right, you're absolutely right. It should be studied further.
And as we say that, by the way, one of the provisions that we found also in the proposed finance bill is on lending.
Okay.
Who is the lender in the digital world? We saw it. And one of it was actually in section 2, cap 47, that says part 1. And the definition of a digital lender is being refined to exclude now banks, SACCOs, microfinance. And of course, the aim is to regulate the emerging fintech lenders who are offering credit online. Yeah. We have so many of these online platforms where you join in and in a week you could be able to get, 50 million shillings. I'm inflating. That's not the number. But you could get any amount of money and then it's inflated to even much more. So when you look at the interest versus what you got in, it's really crazy. So they needed to regulate in that. So the impact of this actually is tighter regulations that could offer protection against predatory lending firms and practices, because some of them would shift to being now too aggressive and even insultive to some of the, the debtors who are normal Kenyans. But smaller fintech lenders who serve artists and gig workers need fast loans. This may also shrink and create a big exit in the market. Remember, one of the biggest problems of production of films in the country is the
financing. Yes.
We've seen articles before. I remember one of, the biggest producers, Ruben Onanga, claiming he could not be able to get a loan from a certain bank. And then later when the film made so much more money, the banks wanted to welcome him back to this conversation.
Yes.
And with such of provision in finance bill, how will it help the gig economy? Because one of the biggest borrowers of this lending platform are the gig economy, the actors.
I love that question.
Yes, you.
Because it's part of my study.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's on social behavior. Because first of all, fintechs in Kenya have done an amazing job to bridge gaps. We were never a credit economy, and they've figured out a solution that has, created a bigger bankable community. Financial inclusion is growing, and there is access to finance that was never there before.
Okay.
The biggest trend that I'm seeing in the creative industries is that we borrow as the person, but we don't borrow as capital. And I'll give an example. If I mention products and
it's okay,
they give you problems, just cut them out. Yeah? So I'll give you an example of M-Pesa. M-Pesa is the biggest fintech, I think, in the world, right? And they've got these credit facilities that like Fuliza, M-Shwari, and then they've launched a few business credits just the other day.
Yeah.
But everybody is on M-Pesa. A big population of creatives is already M-Pesa customer naturally for the phone and daily use.
Yes.
But when you study the product that they have called Pochi la Biashara, it was actually meant for SME and MSMEs. And if you study it further, you actually see it as a right product for the creative industries, because I'll pay you on your phone. You do a gig for me, I send you money on your number.
Yeah.
But that money that comes to your number doesn't help your credit score in any way. But if I send it, when you go to send money and then there's Pochi la Biashara, then it's recognized as business income. And that's why you start building your credit scoring. Now, the Pochi la Biashara loan they've launched, you can get up to 400,000 shillings.
I feel like you're advertising now.
No, that's what I told you. But it's just out of study. But now,
to regulate.
But to my point,
yes,
is that fintechs have been the source of capital for the gig economy without knowing.
Yes.
And we allowed them to be the source of capital without our permission. And right now, what we should do is study that behavior and then conform it. So that, is it making fintech rails that are specific for creative and gig workers? You guys, when the fintechs figure it out, because billions of money is used. I have been in a place where 4 people raised 2 million from their limits.
Yes.
And then that was the money they needed to start their film project.
Okay.
But nobody in the fintech world knows that they actually finance the kickstart of the project. But all these guys raise the money from their personal credit scoring. So even when their company on the other side has 0 credit score,
Yes.
because they just did not know how to borrow it. So I think on the fintech side, this is the number 1 priority for conversation in private sector, at industry level, business to business.
Yes.
We engage them to identify and give products. And that legislation, it will do bad, like you've said, but it will also do good.
Wow.
The good I think it will do is that it will encourage acquisitions.
Okay.
So that the scrupulous and the smaller ones that are not self-sustaining, that you default to pay for one day, they've called your whole family, will be bought and acquired by the bigger ones. Then you have a space where you've got probably 5 to 10 good players who are easy to de-risk and have better terms. And it becomes easier to now model and verticalize products specific for our creative industries. So I think that legislation has one way is bad, but on this other, if you look at this other way, it's also good.
Peter, I would hope you help to jump into this because you're very pro-capitalistic. Which
I'm not, and I live in my reality.
It's a reality.
I live in my reality.
But you see, if we are constantly very pro-capitalism,
Right.
we will water down the young creator who's not able to afford so much. One of the things you've stated is that this lending firms, if they're able to lend and finance some of this gig economies, if you're not able to pay, they take that from you. So the independence of the small creator, which I will always fight
Will
for.
be protected.
How will it be protected?
Oh.
Everything they put out is being acquired because of these loans that they do not have.
I'll tell you why.
That they're not able to pay.
Remember, we are using the term lending loosely.
Okay.
What I should call it is financial solutions. Because what the fintech platform can do for us is not just lend, is understand our irregular income patterns. So that, let's say I'm a makeup artist and I have a gig this month, I have 4 gigs, next month I've got no gig.
Yeah.
But in 6 months, this platform can actually understand my irregular income pattern.
It can start,
and be able, and it's not just studying my regular income pattern, but also my expense. And it will be able to tell me, hey, we noticed this and this hasn't happened. We are able to advance you this so that, because we know this other regular expense is coming up.
Yeah.
Invoicing. You get influencers doing jobs and they're told that you'll be paid after 90 days. What is this person going to do for 90 days? And that's the answer in the platform. Platforms that you can actually upload this stuff and they can advance you on your invoice. So it's financial solutions, not just lending. And that's how you protect the young person who has come in and is being told, we'll pay you after 60 days.
Yes.
And their next gig has come and they don't have the 20,000 capital they need to finance that. Then that platform can intervene at that level. And we get, Kenya actually, if the copyright law that's under review right now comes out as per the proposals that are in there, our IP certificates will become our title deeds.
Which I think it's really
so
great.
then you balance out and
I think that's one of the biggest safeties, and Peter, kindly help me to understand this. One of the biggest struggles we said for a lot of filmmakers, actors in getting loans and getting finance is the fact that they are not able to have security.
Yes.
Security in this time is usually cars and
Shamba.
And in this case, now we have to shift that a little bit.
Yes.
What do you think about IP now being used as, a form of security?
Again, it's all about sensitization, especially to the people who are supposed to give this money as well, and the loans and the likes. We need to tell them how important it is to protect our IP and how have statistics that can show of established industries where IPs, something like Star Wars, how much it has generated for the likes of, George Lucas and his company and the likes. So if we can find such kind of models within the country, then we can use that to let the lenders know that should you plug into this, then automatically sooner or later we'll have an industry that is profitable.
But remember, today we were talking about the Finance Bill 2025. And
But I'd like your opinion on that because you're a creator.
yes.
And you are in the creator ecosystem. I wouldn't say you are in that group that you love protecting. You're above them, but because you understand it better.
Yes.
Do you think that fintech solutions and the IP certificates would protect these young and upcoming creators? And if it were to, how would that picture look like?
I think the information, as we've just put it out, the intellectual property being used as security would be one of the easiest ways for us, because taking my idea, a book, the thought that I have, this new show that I want to produce, as I'm sure it's going to get numbers, it will stream. Just selling a dream to a bank officer, it really is not going to work. But if I sell to them this certificate, this copyright certificate that I have, it will work. Let's get into freelancing. A lot of creatives are freelancers most of the time. Sometimes I call myself that. So the definition of a freelancer is not changing so much in this finance bill, but how they're earning their market, which is the digital workplace, is at risk. So let's take a look at the clause that has been suggested. That is Section 2, Cap 472. So what it means is that the selling of art, a course, merchandise, and I know so many of us have merchandise that we sell online, you're now operating in a taxable marketplace.
Yes.
That is changing. So the impact of this is whether you sell your music via either the other platform, Seller and any other, or you offer writing services on Upwork or many of these apps, or you run an online course, this in definition directly applies to you. So you will be taxed on that. While it creates clarity for taxation, it really defines it very, very well. It also means that the platforms and their users may need to comply with VAT and licensing rules to report whether you have done the work or not. So I'm like, in a global internet where we're doing work on Upwork, where we're selling music, you're selling beats, you're selling a short film, even to YouTube sometimes. This is going to be creating a double taxation. Because remember, when they stream on these platforms, already on YouTube, if your show is on YouTube, YouTube already gets its own,
cut first. Yeah.
And again, I'm going to be taxed as a freelancer. What do we do with this clause that is already being proposed in the finance bill?
I have no proposal, but what I can say is maybe just to piggyback on something that he kept on insisting on is he understands that the reality of where we live is we are a capitalist state. And the sooner we understand that, especially if we want to really practice in this space effectively, then we need to understand that we have to be businessmen in everything that we do.
Okay.
Right? At some point, we want to get financing. But when you go to a financier and tells you we don't see the data, we don't see
what
you've been doing, then if you don't have structures and within your business, then by all means we'll always struggle with how to fund our initiatives. So we are forced to veer away from being freelancers to being business entities going forward. Then we can enjoy all these perks you're talking about on this.
I remember I mentioned it earlier. I believe we were still a very young state. We're 65 or 7 as a state. We're not too old. And let's refer to other states where Upwork began, where freelancers exist and they could travel all over the world. You could be working in Thailand and you're a resident of the UK. Does this apply in other states? Because, we might be applying to things that, they don't work in other states that are more developed than we are, than they're the ones who even set up some of these platforms. And here we are living ourselves with so much baggage that we might not be able to handle. Having people fall off us as freelancers, and then people now start hiding their data. We already have people who use a different VPN to show that they're working in this country. It's a problem that exists. So what will this do to that very freelance industry that exists?
I think you're right. But then there is a question of balance.
Okay.
If I am a teacher hired by a school in Kenya and I teach, I do nothing else. I earn my salary, my pay-as-you-earn is taken away from me. I shop in Kenyan shops, which means I pay my VAT and I live a comfortable life. But you're a teacher on the online platform. Where is the balance? That's just a question.
Okay.
Now, on this other side of the gig economy, I think it's a choice thing. And really because we are not a socialist country. And why it's a choice thing?
Yes.
Cate launched something called Eatings, right?
Yeah.
So if you're an individual and you want to stay compliant and you're comfortable to earn as an individual where you only pay withholding tax,
Yes.
where you don't attract all these other taxes that are related to enterprise, you can stay in that lane. Keep doing your thing as person XX of PIN number X, and you give all your invoices in e-teams,
Yes.
and they take 5% withholding tax, and nobody will ask you for anything more. But the moment you transition from Modoni wa Nini to
PIN number this.
Moraka Enterprises Limited,
Yes.
you have entered the new space. So maybe it's a question of understanding and planning in this decade. Do I really want to get into the space of being an enterprise and be in this murky space?
Yeah.
No. I want to stay as a freelancer. I will do my work as Peter Kawa. I will pay 5% withholding tax. And that's where I will stay.
There is risk in that. In that now we're going to be seeing independent creators now, they'll be moving from an informal sector. Now, we will now creators will no longer be in the informal sector because creators are in the informal sector.
Yes.
And that's why it's a choice thing. It is a choice thing, in my view.
Yeah.
It's purely a choice thing because when I started making films, I was just myself. And eventually, I started business, Film Crew in Africa. At the point, it was called Film Crew Productions.
Yes.
So I was the guy. Camera is me, editing is me, in my mother's house. And eventually, I meet fellow creators. I meet Tosh, I meet Linda, I meet Ledama, and then we decide that let us turn this into an enterprise. So it becomes a partnership.
Yeah.
But we did not know what we were getting ourselves into because nobody had told us what a limited company actually means to the taxman.
You know what's risky, sadly, about this, and I hear you, is that this actual law that has been proposed is not differentiating between a person and a business entity, and yet expecting them to be taxed under the same bracket.
No.
That's the gap.
I think there is something in my own understanding, and I think maybe it's a language thing. The bill defines what it wants to tax.
Yes.
And what it has outlined as what it wants to tax is the service. Whatever you're doing, whether it's a service or provision of goods, that's what it's going to tax.
Yeah.
Now, how that service is produced,
either by a business or by an individual.
yes,
That's a
puts you in a tax cluster. Because remember, this is a bill. When you go to the act, then it's unpacked that in this category, then you find there is this, there is this, there is this.
Yeah.
It's like tax importation. The bill, there is something that also on the side of tax, it's going to affect us greatly, which is this thing of import duty. But when you go to the East African Customs Act that guides that, you then see that they've even done codes that code this and this and this. If it's for an exhibition or a festival, then it's exempt. So I think it's a question of, yes, the proposal is there. But if you really understand the business environment in Kenya, then you do appreciate that as much as it's draconian in its writing, but it's a conversation that can be had to see. If a gig worker decides to operate as a sole proprietor, as their person, then this should not apply to them.
You see, what is so unfair about this is we're forgetting that they have looked at the gig economy mainly as the creatives. They're forgetting that we have taxi drivers who are also doing this. So the highlight and the spotlight of this actual proposal on this bill is mainly for creatives.
Oh, yes. But you know what?
Oh, yes, it is not right. It's
but do you know why?
fair.
Do you know why?
Yes.
It's because it's the future. Nobody focuses on things that are dying. The focus is on what they know clearly, that as we grow every year, we are getting maximum money and potential from these guys. So the approach is not right. There I agree with you completely. The approach is not right because it will not cushion growth.
I feel like you're encouraging the, as much as, yes, we understand something that you have said again, this is a capitalistic world. If you encourage this kind of systems and this kind of tax highlights and focus on certain industries, you're pushing back. You're making the creative economy that exists, or rather the people in the creative economy exist already, want to roll back and just hide a little bit. Because if we're going to be taxed this much, and
let me ask you a question now.
It's like we're being used as a litmus test. Let's test the creative economy. It's already producing so much money. This is a litmus test on the creative economy, if it can handle this much heavy taxation. But this litmus test, is it going to be profitable to us?
I have a question.
Or will it make us just, cower back and not want to do this? Yes.
What is the proposal? What is the tax amount?
We need to look at it further a little bit.
It's what is the tax amount? There is no tax amount.
Yes.
It's a proposal to tax. And the provision is that it is upon industry, and that's why industrial policies are really important. What Peter said in the beginning, if you're not organized, regulations will be made on your behalf. And because it's a proposal, and it's a very good thing you've highlighted, it has no number. It has no figure, which means it's a welcome to come and say, this is what should happen. If we put too much attention on that, it shouldn't be there, it's fine, but it will come back next year. Because if we don't address it now, and it's a question of, in Kenya, I've never had an association or even a grouping, influencers, for example, to say, we are here to look after.
They recently launched.
Yeah.
We're in the direction.
And that is where, in my view, that's where the problem is. At any given time, policy is made in a square.
I think
where there is the industry people, there is the government, and then there is the money that sits anywhere. But to be very frank and honest, this conversation we're having today, what precipitates from it tomorrow? You get what I mean?
I understand what you're saying by putting it on hold.
I'm not talking about I'm talking about us.
Okay.
Myself included. We are all creators here.
Yes.
What happens between May and May?
May next year.
You get
May 2025.
What happened between June last year and June this year?
You see, this is
everybody goes back.
This is the agreement we need to have as creative. Let me suggest, because I'm a creative as well.
Yes.
The reason as to why I keep saying pause and study is because it gives enough time for this industry to understand and recreate itself. We cannot deny that already there are problems in the industries. Collection of royalties, distribution. Literally, I think 2 days back, we had a couple of musicians going head to head with one of the biggest music retailers, which is Safaricom and Skiza. And they had sent out a legal statement to them and did a whole press conference on it. So already there are gaps. Yes. So I'm like, you're already taxing so much. Yes, I understand the gig economy all over the world is growing and people are earning from the gig economy, but we still have problems that exist already. How about we pause, study, and then we come back to it after 5 years? I don't feel like we need to have the discussion of the creative and taxation of creative agencies for now.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But on one condition. When we pause,
yes,
it cannot be business as usual for creatives.
How?
Because from June last year to June this year, nobody has been talking about what do we want in the next finance bill. We wait until the proposal has come on the table.
Yes.
To interrogate it.
Yeah.
The KIPRA, who do policy, in December sent out a call and said, we have put a whole week, come. Do you know how many responses they got?
How many?
17.
That's very little.
You know, and it's because one day, maybe tomorrow you'll be minister. Who knows? And when you sit in that seat, you will have the same frustration, because if you've taken the oath, you must serve, you must do something. You cannot not show up with a proposal because it's an obligation to you. But on this other end, there are no pipelines that are feeding you with the same information that you require. He's a leader for the guild. I am a leader for the film industry. It is a problem. When we are, for example, there is a proposal, when we're doing the labor proposal, and we have made progress because now we've developed something called National Occupational Guidelines for people working in the film and TV industry. It's in the Ministry of Labor's desk, finally. But it's a labor of love. Ask him. It's always me and him in the meeting. I don't get paid. We don't collect subscriptions from our members because we said when we took office 2 years ago, don't pay because there's no value to pay. They don't pay. And so when you call people for conversations, they don't show up. And
even trainings,
they don't show up. So as much as, yes, these proposals are bad, we also have to look inside and say, even if the government says, Sawa, we have paused. But that pause will also mean when they come back next year and say, what answer do we give? Music.
Yes.
You talked about CMOs. It is in the only country in Kenya where the table where royalties are being discussed, the owners of the copyright are not on the table. Licensing is done by Kekobo. They license collective management organizations. But where is the compliance mechanism to make sure that these CMOs perform? That is where a music industry association sits to say, this financial year, this specific CMO did what they promised. We got our 70%. They are compliant. License them again. But this other one did not do, we've not received money. So as an association, we are not accrediting them to collect on our behalf because they're right holders. But where is that organization?
There is a gap and there's a roll-up. Then that is why you're here. So we're able to fill this gap and be able to sit in this forums to give the proper proposals for finance bill in the future. One of my biggest dreams is to have affirmative action in the kind of industry that we have. Yes. Affirmative action makes it. I've seen you a little bit silent on a couple of issues, and I'd really want to hear what you have to say would be the future of Kenya, especially if we are to look at the finance bill and the creative economy. What would be the best future for us, or what would be the best thing we can do to make sure that we're protected moving forward?
I think first of all is just to not necessarily partner, but work very closely with government, just to make sure that the conversations are all inclusive. Where going forward, when the government is setting aside money through Treasury for our industry through state agencies, then clearly there is participation, and we always feel like we are heard. And for you to feel heard is how much money is put towards developing and improving in the growth of your industry.
Ezzy, you have been very vocal about a capitalistic world. We have to look at the reality and the future. What would be the best choice moving forward for the creative economy and the finance bill 2025?
You want me to be honest?
Sum it up. Be honest, be objective, be fair, and remember that a lot of filmmakers are looking at you and are watching this.
Number one, we need to decide if we want, and this is not political, we need to decide if we want a social model for our industry or a capital model for our industry. Because you look at the United Kingdom, they have a social model for their cultural and creative industries. Where they have the Arts Council, so people are funded. And when you hear Labour government is cutting funding, you're seeing museums and theatres going all over the place because they took a social model. When you look at Korea and what they've done with the K-culture, it's a capital model.
Very much so.
Where the state is actually an investor.
In that,
So when I say the swings of politics, but within the sector, we need to decide where we want to sit. And that conversation then becomes what we translate to the policy we want the state to make for us. If we want to be supported by state, like the UK model, it becomes our model and we stick to it. If we want to take this other model, it becomes our model. Secondly, I think route to market is the biggest opportunity that is underexploited. I'll talk from the film perspective. Right now we have films that are very good quality, story-wise, technical-wise,
Yes.
but very low return on investment. We've got a higher number of filmmakers and film production companies, but most, if not almost all, are not making profits. Some are shutting down.
Yeah.
And all that is happening. So why is that happening? It's because we have had an overemphasis on the supply side. Production grants, master classes, training to teach us how to produce, to teach us how to manufacture the output. But we've never focused on this other side, on the demand side, on innovation, on audience engagement.
Yes.
And that has been the biggest place where these platforms that are attracting taxes have exploited. That is what YouTube has exploited, Netflix, Spotify, all these platforms have exploited that blue ocean. So I'd encourage government to give incentives for local technology companies and developers to develop local solutions, African solutions, platforms that we can then trade with and ensure that they protect us to grow by putting taxes for the external ones and giving us incentives. Naturally, we will gravitate towards this, and then we'll be able to reach our audiences and money will come back.
We don't have so much time, but of course that was our opinion. I will say this, the approach to just tax the industry might not be so helpful. That is my point of view. I would propose for an affirmative action, leeways, exemptions to grow an industry that is yet to grow. We already have institutions like M-Pesa that are not seen as a financial institution and seen as otherwise. Hence, they're able to operate properly and with other, restrictions and leeways. If we could be given the same, we'd be in a better position. That's just the take on the Finance Bill 2025. Remember, you can give us your opinion on social media. The hashtag is The Social Newsroom. Thank you so much for watching. This is the Summer Box Studios.